Here's something most people never get told. Some of the sharpest, most emotionally perceptive people alive didn't develop those abilities through education, self-help books, or years of therapy. They developed them because they had to. Their minds were forged, not taught. Psychologists have a name for this now. They call it traumatic intelligence, and if you've never heard of it, that's exactly what we're going to fix today. Let's get into it. The setup. Here's the psychological foundation. Trauma doesn't only wound people. In many documented cases, it sharpens them. Research in developmental psychology shows that children who grow up in unpredictable, emotionally volatile environments often develop heightened sensitivity to social cues, emotional patterns, and nonverbal communication that most people simply never acquire. Their brains, specifically the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, get wired early to detect signals that the average person walks right past. The result? A form of intelligence that looks almost invisible from the outside, but runs extraordinarily deep on the inside. Here are the 10 signs you have it. Sign number 1. You read a room before anyone says a word. You walk into a space and something in you quietly shifts. You pick up on tension in someone's posture. You clock a micro-expression that crosses someone's face for less than half a second. That's not mystical intuition. That's pattern recognition. Your brain was trained from an early age to scan for emotional data because at some point, that scanning kept you safe. Sign number 2. You sense what people need before they know it themselves. You notice when someone is struggling, even when they insist they're fine. You pick up on the shift in someone's energy before they've even processed it. Psychologists call this hyperempathy, and it typically develops in people who grew up needing to track the emotional states of caregivers very, very closely. You didn't choose to be this attuned, your environment required it. Sign number 3. Under pressure, you go calm. When everything around you falls apart, something inside you gets strategic. You don't freeze, you adapt. Researchers describe this as stress inoculation. Your nervous system is better calibrated for high-stakes situations because high-stakes situations were once just Tuesday. Your baseline is other people's crisis. Sign number 4. You think about human behavior almost compulsively. You replay conversations, you analyze why people do what they do. You search for the meaning behind actions that most people don't even notice. This depth of psychological thinking was forged by years of trying to understand behavior that felt unpredictable and therefore dangerous. You became a student of human nature because understanding people felt essential to your survival. Now pause here, because I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds like it's just framing struggle as a superpower, and that's worth taking seriously. We'll come back to it, but first, the remaining signs go even deeper. Sign number 5. You are deeply, quietly self-reliant. You don't wait to be rescued. You build solutions independently and usually without making a show of it. This self-sufficiency often surprises people who know you, but developmentally it makes complete sense. When your environment wasn't reliably supportive growing up, your brain learned to internalize resourcefulness. Dependence felt dangerous, so competence was the default. Sign number 6. You feel things at a frequency most people don't have access to. Music hits differently. Injustice bothers you viscerally. A kind gesture from a stranger can genuinely move you. The amygdala, the brain's emotional processing center, becomes highly sensitized through repeated emotional activation over time. You're not being dramatic. Your brain is literally wired to feel more. Sign number 7. Your trust threshold is high, but when you trust, it's deep. You don't give trust easily, and that's not cynicism. Cognitive psychologists call it adaptive skepticism. Your brain learned early that not every signal of safety was real, so it built filters. Those filters can be isolating, but the connections you do form tend to be honest, resilient, and unusually meaningful. Sign number 8. Stillness makes you uncomfortable. Slowing down can feel unsafe. When things get quiet, the mind tends to wander inward, and not always gently. This is the nervous system doing exactly what it was conditioned to do: stay alert. Learning to genuinely rest for someone with traumatic intelligence isn't passive, it's an active reclamation. It's telling the brain that the threat has passed. Sign number 9. You carry wisdom that doesn't match your age. You've looked closely at pain, your own and others, and something in you refused to let it be meaningless. Research on post-traumatic growth, developed by Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, found that a significant portion of people who navigate real adversity emerge with a deeper philosophical clarity about what matters and why. You didn't choose to learn early, but you did. Sign number 10. You have a quiet, unshakable sense of meaning. You don't move through life casually. Things matter to you in ways that are hard to explain to people who haven't walked through what you have. That's not a burden, that's a compass. Here's what's worth sitting with. Traumatic intelligence isn't something to celebrate at the expense of acknowledging the difficulty that created it. The sharpness is real, but so was the cost. What psychology invites us to understand is that the human brain is not simply damaged by hardship. It is also, in very specific, measurable ways, transformed by it. The perceptiveness you carry, the empathy you extend, the way you read the world, these aren't coincidences. They're the architecture of a mind that had to grow quickly.
and did. The question now isn't how you got here. The question is what you choose to do with the intelligence you built along the way. If this resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe if you want more content that takes psychology seriously.